The situation in Palestine and Israel is once again at a boiling point. Violence has erupted, with devastating consequences for civilians on both sides. This latest chapter in the decades-long conflict is a stark reminder of the urgent need for a just and lasting peace. The root causes of the conflict are complex and deeply entrenched. However, understanding the current situation requires acknowledging the asymmetrical power dynamic between Israel, a powerful state with a sophisticated military, and the Palestinians, who live under occupation or in a state of siege. The Gaza Strip, home to over 2 million Palestinians, has been particularly hard hit by the recent violence. The Israeli military has launched airstrikes on Gaza, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. The United Nations has described the situation in Gaza as a humanitarian catastrophe. Hospitals are overwhelmed, essential supplies are running low, and many families have been left homeless. The people of Gaza are facing a dire situation, caught in the crossfire of a conflict that seems to have no end in sight. The already precarious humanitarian situation in Gaza has been exacerbated by the ongoing blockade. Israel controls Gaza's borders, airspace, and territorial waters, severely restricting the movement of people and goods. This blockade has crippled Gaza's economy and left its population dependent on humanitarian aid. The international community has repeatedly called for an end to the blockade, but these calls have gone unheeded. Journalists covering the conflict face immense risks. They are often caught in the crossfire, targeted by both sides, and subject to intimidation and censorship. The Committee to Protect Journalists has documented numerous cases of journalists being killed or injured while reporting on the conflict. In addition to the physical dangers, journalists also face pressure from their respective governments to report the conflict in a certain light. This can make it difficult for journalists to provide objective and unbiased coverage of the conflict. Despite the dangers, journalists play a crucial role in informing the world about the realities of the conflict. They provide a voice to the voiceless and shine a light on human rights abuses. Their work is essential for holding those in power accountable and for building understanding between different communities. It is imperative that journalists are able to carry out their work freely and safely, without fear of reprisal. The international community has condemned the violence and called for an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations Security Council has held emergency meetings to discuss the situation, but so far no concrete action has been taken. The United States, a close ally of Israel, has blocked several Security Council resolutions condemning the violence. This lack of a unified international response has emboldened both sides and made a ceasefire more elusive. While there is broad international consensus on the need for a ceasefire, there is less agreement on the underlying issues of the conflict. Some countries support a two-state solution with an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. Others believe that a one-state solution with equal rights for all citizens is the only viable option. The lack of a clear international roadmap for peace has allowed the conflict to fester for decades. Section 5. The role of Hamas. Hamas, the Islamist militant group that controls Gaza, has been a major player in the conflict. Hamas is considered a terrorist organization by Israel, the United States, and the European Union. The group has fired thousands of rockets into Israel, causing fear and disruption to civilian life. While Hamas claims to be fighting for Palestinian liberation, its tactics have been widely condemned as indiscriminate and counterproductive. Hamas's control of Gaza has also complicated efforts to provide humanitarian aid to the territory. Israel has accused Hamas of using aid shipments to smuggle weapons and of diverting aid money to fund its military operations. These accusations have made it difficult for international organizations to operate freely in Gaza and have further isolated the territory. Section 6. Historical context. A century of conflict. The current conflict is part of a long and bloody history between Israelis and Palestinians. The roots of the conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century, during the period of British rule in Palestine. After the Holocaust, in which Nazi Germany systematically murdered 6 million Jews, there was widespread international support for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine. However, this land was already inhabited by a large Arab population, the Palestinians. In 1948, Israel declared independence, sparking the First Arab-Israeli War. During this war, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were expelled from their homes or fled in fear, becoming refugees. This event is known as the Nakba, or catastrophe, in Arabic. The 1948 war established the State of Israel, but it also created a legacy of resentment and displacement that continues to this day. Section 7. The Two-State Solution, a Distant Dream. For many years, the two-state solution with an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel was seen as the most viable path to peace. However, the two-state solution has become increasingly difficult to achieve. Israel continues to expand its settlements in the West Bank, land that would be part of a future Palestinian state. These settlements are considered illegal under international law, but Israel has shown no willingness to dismantle them. The growth of Israeli settlements has fragmented the West Bank, making it difficult to imagine a contiguous and viable Palestinian state. Moreover, the Palestinian leadership is divided, with the Palestinian Authority controlling the West Bank and Hamas controlling Gaza. This division has made it difficult for the Palestinians to present a united front in negotiations with Israel. Section 8. Life under occupation, daily struggles. For Palestinians living in the West Bank, daily life is marked by the realities of Israeli occupation. They face movement restrictions, checkpoints, and the constant threat of violence from both Israeli forces and settlers. The Israeli military controls all aspects of life in the West Bank, from the allocation of water resources to the issuance of building permits. This system of control has been condemned by human rights groups as a form of apartheid. The Israeli occupation has had a devastating impact on the Palestinian economy. The West Bank is heavily dependent on Israel for trade and employment, but Palestinians face discrimination in the Israeli job market. The Palestinian Authority has limited control over its own economy and is heavily reliant on foreign aid. This economic dependence has made it difficult for the Palestinian Authority to assert its independence. Section 9. The power of international pressure. While the international community has been unable to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it can play a constructive role. International pressure is essential for holding both sides accountable for their actions and for creating the conditions for meaningful negotiations. Governments around the world can use their diplomatic and economic leverage to push for an end to the occupation, a halt to settlement expansion, and an end to the blockade of Gaza. Civil society organizations also have an important role to play. Groups like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have documented human rights abuses committed by both sides and have advocated for accountability. The Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions (BDS) movement has called for a boycott of Israeli goods and services until Israel complies with international law. While BDS is controversial, it has helped to raise awareness of the Palestinian cause. Section 10. The need for dialogue and peace. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the most intractable conflicts of our time. Decades of violence, mistrust and missed opportunities have left both sides deeply scarred. However, the human cost of this conflict demands that we continue to search for a peaceful resolution. A just and lasting peace will require both sides to make difficult compromises and to acknowledge the other's humanity. Dialogue and reconciliation are essential for building a future where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security. This will require addressing the root causes of the conflict, including the occupation, the settlements, and the plight of refugees. It will also require leadership from both sides, willing to take risks for peace and to challenge the narratives of hatred and fear that have fueled this conflict for far too long.